Welcome to the Intentional Father Podcast, where us fathers parent our children, not by accident, but with intent. I'm your host, Aaron Stroman. Discipline. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 5. When you're talking about parenting, when you're talking about fatherhood, we have to talk about discipline. How do we, as fathers, best discipline our children? Now, let me start off by saying a couple things. I know discipline is very personal to a lot of people. It's unique, and suggestively so. Make your discipline process and policy, if you call it that, make it unique to your family. A lot of you are going to have a spouse to have to unify with when it comes to discipline. So this is a good subject to talk over and get on the same page. And when I say get on the same page, sometimes making a literal page, writing down what your discipline plan is as a family is very beneficial, very helpful. I'm going to give some ideas. I'll give some concepts, and I'll also give a few prescriptions on some discipline ideas. But you're going to really want to take the concepts and develop your own approach to discipline when it comes to your children. So let's start with some fundamentals. First of all, I'm not going to read all the Bible verses, but I counted, and there are 30 verses in the book of Proverbs, Old Testament wisdom book, simply on consequences. If you do this, then this happens. So there's this idea of wisdom knowing consequences. What happens as a result of this action? In essence, your discipline needs to come down. When you discipline your kids, you're teaching them that there are consequences to your actions, positive and negative. A lot of times people only focus on the negative, but there are positive consequences, and there should part of discipline is reinforcing good behavior. There are 20 verses that talk about parental correction in the book of Proverbs. So giving advice on parents correcting their children, which is discipline. You should check those out. Read the whole book. I'm not gonna go and read those for you or list them out. You should be in the book of Proverbs. Tons of wisdom in there for all sorts of life situations, including parenting, including discipline. Now, Hebrews chapter 12, verses 5 through 11 or 12, that's a great section on discipline also. And it gives us this foundation that a loving father disciplines his child, and even a loving heavenly father will discipline his heavenly children, his spiritual children. And we all know what it's like to be disciplined by God, and it's loving. It's not hateful or vengeful. But look up Hebrews chapter 12 as well. Those are all foundational ideas to what I'm going to be sharing with you. But ultimately, there has to be consequences. There has to be discipline in the home. I talked on a prior podcast about obedience, and part of the obedience, teaching children to be obedient, is discipline. There's got to be discipline there. So when you discipline your kids, I'm going to give some ideas, and I'm going to give some concepts to go with them. But it's important to discipline. Let's just start with that. Some parents don't discipline kids, and you're setting your children up for failure, because if you don't discipline your children, some part of society will discipline them as adults. And it's either going to be an employer, it's going to be maybe a drill sergeant, it might be a correctional institution, law enforcement, jail, etc. So they're going to be disciplined. It's best if you discipline your kids instead of someone else. What are some ideas? So I'm just going to start throwing out some practicals, and then this will open up some concepts. But here's some ideas when it comes to disciplining your kids. A lot of people immediately think of spanking. And the whole idea of spanking your children is a hot topic today. it can, man, people can get fired up about it. I'll be very transparent. I was spanked as a child. I wasn't abused. I don't look back and go, I was traumatized from being spanked. The benefit of being spanked was there's an immediate association with the consequence for negative behavior. Now, I spanked my kids a little bit when they were very young and spank appropriately. Okay, so all of this podcast is overshadowed with there's a federal, state, and local law that precedes anything I say. So again, abuse is wrong, but there are ways for spanks to happen that's not abusive, that's completely legal. So take that into consideration. And also, again, I mentioned this, spanking may or may not be for you, but spanking isn't the only form of discipline. I guess that's where I'm getting. It's not the only form. We can be creative, we can be more effective, but sometimes it can be effective. I forget the book, but one of my mentors talked about a book, even when kids are little, using a loosely rolled up newspaper for spank, because it doesn't even hurt, but it associates a sound, and it's like, okay, this is what I just did was bad. I need to not do that. There's a consequence with my behavior. Now, we can take discipline in a whole new way. One of the most effective forms of discipline that I used with my kids, I have two children. They're a year apart from each other. When they were big enough to ride in the front seat of the car without a car seat, ride shotgun, that was like the coveted position in the car. And if there was bad behavior, especially bad behavior in the car, I would take away the privilege of riding in shotgun for a week, or maybe one time I did it for a month. And that was like torture for my certain child. I won't name which one got grounded from having the shotgun seat, but for a full month, that child didn't. And it was torturous for them. Really effective discipline. Hey, you misbehaved this way. There's a consequence. Here's a consequence. Time out is a great form of discipline. One of the concepts is make sure that the discipline fits the crime or fits the bad behavior. So time out. If it's a little kids don't have huge attention spans. So even sitting them in timeout for 30 seconds or 60 seconds can begin to make those associations and connections like, oh, I'm not supposed to hit. I got sat in timeout. Maybe I shouldn't hit. There's a consequence here. I'm being disciplined. Got it. Maybe, as they get older, they'll have longer memory. Like if you put someone in timeout and the child's so small they can't remember what they were in timeout for by the time they get out of timeout, is the timeout was too long. So don't do that. But timeouts are great. And then going along the timeout route, you can also sometimes put their toys in timeout. So if a kid's playing with a toy and they're getting in trouble, you take that toy away and you say, this is going in timeout. Again, when children are toddlers, their toy car, their baby doll or something gets put in timeout. They don't like that. It's very effective. When they get older into teenage years, we're still doing timeout. We call it something different. We call it you're being grounded from your cell phone. I'm taking your cell phone away. And oh my goodness, talk about effective parenting. You take that cell phone away from a teenager, it's like life is over. They do not enjoy that. They want that thing back. They're so addicted to those things. I should probably do a cell phone policy episode at some point in the future. But taking their cell phone away, great form of discipline. Great form of discipline. Okay, I'm looking at my notes. This is one, if the kids are acting up in the car, maybe they're hitting each other, they're fighting, whatever, they're messing around. Instead of trying to reach back and smack them or take something away, this is a good one. Have them sit on their hands. So in the car seat, they have to sit on their hands. That gets uncomfortable and irritating really quick, and they very quickly, kids will start beginning to question their life decisions and go, maybe I shouldn't have behaved the way I behaved. Okay, I'm ready to straighten up. Another one that turns into fun, which this will be the next concept. But I would have my kids put their hands up and make them touch the roof of the car. So if they're acting up and you're like, oh, you hit, don't hit, or you're being naughty, Okay, you got to touch the roof of the car until I say so. And it doesn't take very long, and the shoulders start getting tired, and they start whining, and their hand will drop. You say, "No, put it back up there," and and a lot of times this leads to laughter, which you can integrate laughter into your discipline. It's a great practice. So let's talk about that. Anyways, hands on the roof. It's just one of those associations. You did something naughty. Now you got to do something. There's a consequence. And again, it doesn't hurt a person. There's no injury. It's not pleasant. I'll say that. It's a little uncomfortable. But hey, welcome to living a disciplined life. Now, I'll suggest it's okay to bring laughter into the discipline, and for a couple reasons. One, it's not like we're always disciplining our kids for outrageous acts of crime and violence, right? Sometimes it's, they said a word they shouldn't say, or they did, they took the thing from the other person's hand, right? It's not that big of a deal. And again, we can help them learn, and we can discipline our children and have some fun with it. Another thing is we certainly don't, and I'll jump ahead. We don't want to get into anger. Don't want to get to a mindset of anger when we're disciplining. And I'll get more into that in a second. So being on kind of the easier laughter side is more pleasant, and I think that communicates, hey, I'm being serious, and I have these expectations for you, and there's consequences when you don't follow them, but I don't have to rule with the iron fist and be Mr. Mean all the time. I'm going to have fun, and your bad behavior and your discipline isn't going to ruin the day for everyone else. We're going to keep smiling and laughing. In fact, we might even laugh with you. I wouldn't suggest laughing at someone during discipline, but laughing with them is a great thing. And so when the kids have their hands on the top of the roof in the car and they start slowing down, no, put it back up. I see you in the mirror. My arms are tired. Well, I'm tired of you misbehaving. Can I please put them down? Well, let's talk about it. This is a consequence. So then you're having the conversation. I won't do it again. Right. And you make progress and, okay, put it down. Or you put it down for 15 seconds and you got to put it back up for another 15 seconds to earn your peace with the family. So those are some ideas of what to do when disciplining, some concepts. Now, but I also want to talk about what not to do. And I already mentioned the first one. Don't discipline out of anger. We take it back to the spanking conversation. Spanking turns abusive when the parents are angry and they just are out of control, and that's not good. Secondly, when you're angry, you just don't make as clear of decisions as when you're composed. And quite frankly, you're going to find yourself angry when you need to discipline your kids because the kids' behavior is causing the anger, right? You're either disappointed or you're upset. And we don't want to have that loss of judgment. And so what do? You give yourself some time to cool down. And you can send your children to sit on the couch in the corner to give you time to cool down. Sometimes even saying hey, that's not acceptable. That has to stop. And there is a consequence for that. But we're not going to deal with it yet. We're going to deal with it in 30 minutes or an hour from now whenever I'm a little more chilled out. But right now you've really upset me. So it's a good way to communicate, hey, I'm so upset. I can't even deal with this right now. And so I'm not going to. That's giving your children a good example to follow. And then it's preserving your own integrity and respect. Remember, you have to be worthy of respect, and so you have to act in a respectable way. And a lot of times if you're angry, you're not going to be acting in a respectable way. So don't discipline when you're angry. And then playing off of that idea, don't degrade your children with your words. Don't tear them down. Don't insult them. Especially, we could just say that period, but especially when it comes to discipline. It's easy to to say things like, you're smarter than that. Why are you being so stupid right now? That may be true, but what you're doing with your words is you're tearing them down. And what's the motive behind discipline? Why do we discipline our children? To make them better. So we don't want to try to make them better with one hand and tear them down with the other. That's counterproductive. Not a good idea to insult your children, to tear them down, to degrade them. We don't want to use our words to provoke them, to make them feel bad or worthless or unworthy of being a part of the family or whatever the situation is. And again, it's really easy for parents to do, to kind of lower themselves to that adolescence or childish behavior and say, I'm going to hurt you with my words because I don't like your actions. Not what we want to do. So don't degrade, tear down, or insult with your words. Next one is don't yell. I'm not a fan of yelling at children, especially out of anger. Yelling to protect someone, yelling to encourage, you're at a basketball game, yelling to be funny. If you need to express intensity, which is good, if you're disciplining and you're upset, it's good to communicate that and express that. Don't do it by yelling. Maybe a harsh tone of voice, get serious, but I don't like the idea of yelling. That kind of starts to fall into that degrading. I don't, as adults, if someone approaches you and yells at you, how are you going to feel and how are you going to respond? Someone starts yelling at me, getting in my face and yelling. That's a preface to violence. I feel like I'm going to be attacked. I don't want to act that way to my kids. You don't want to act that way to your kids. So don't yell. And here's the next thing. Don't break stuff as a part of discipline. So Legos would be one example. If your child is big into Legos and you're upset and they need disciplined, don't just like smash their Legos. Or if you're going to completely take away a toy forever, maybe throw it away. I wouldn't destroy it. I wouldn't be destructive with your behavior. Instead, donate it to the local thrift store or give it to, I don't know if I'd say give it to someone else because that's a little more spiteful than what I would want in discipline. But giving it to a good cause is a great alternative to breaking stuff. Even if it's not the child stuff, you don't want to slam the door and break something or punch the wall and break something instead of punching. Like, don't be destructive. Don't be destructive when you're disciplining because it's turning the product, again, it's taking something that's supposed to be productive, discipline, and it makes it destructive. And you don't want to start blending those things because that's how trauma happens. And sure, all of our kids will be traumatized some way from our parenting, but let's not let it be that way. And then here's one I talked about in, I think it was either the conflict resolution or the obedience episode, but don't give your kids a taste of their own medicine. So if your kid bites someone, a sibling, don't bite them back. That's hypocritical. And I did that. There was a time when I would do that and think, no, that's good. They need to know what it feels like. Have them bite themselves. But if the lesson is it's not okay to bite people, well, then don't bite them. Don't give them a taste of their own medicine. I gave the example of my son wrestled my daughter too hard, so I wrestled him too hard. That's a bit hypocritical, and I'm not acting in a respectful manner. So there's no way for my kids to respect me in that moment. So the idea of I'm going to give you a taste of your own medicine, not a good discipline technique. Don't do it. Be of integrity. Be the bigger person. And man, that's a big lesson right there in discipline and always in parenting. Just be the bigger person. If you find yourself acting like a child, you're dropping down to their level, don't do it. Kids don't need someone on their level. They need someone on the level above them. So those are the types of fathers that we need to be. And then here's the last one. I'll get a little bit on a soapbox on this one, and this probably won't apply to everyone who's listening, but to all the religious people, all the Christians listening, don't use religion as a form of discipline. And when I say that, here's what I mean. As a youth pastor, a lot of times a parent would show up to church and be like, "Hey, where's your kid?" And be like, "Oh, we grounded them from youth group." Why? Well, in essence, it came down to a form of discipline. If your church or your youth group is not making your child better, then they shouldn't go there in the first place. If it is making them better, don't ground them from that when they need that more. Sure, it may be fun, activity, but don't use religion as a form of discipline. Here's one that I have to be careful of. Sometimes my kids act up and I'm like, we're not going to do that. In fact, that goes against what the Bible says. So I have a tendency, I want to make them go read the Bible but I don't want to make that association that reading the Bible is a form of punishment. They do need to read the Bible, and I have them read the Bible, but don't make it a form of punishment. There's just, whenever you start using the religion or the faith to be a form of discipline, it can really warp a child's understanding of faith and religion and take it to a place that it's not intended to go. So you can use biblical principles to validate and justify why you're disciplining your child. And that I do. What was it? I wrote it down here on my notes. Hebrews chapter 12. I've quoted that. I've told my kids, hey, I love you and so I'm disciplining you. Discipline's a part of maturing spiritually and physically, emotionally, socially. The Bible has mandated me to be your father, and part of that discipline. So this is why I'm doing it. I'm doing this because I love you. I don't enjoy discipline, but here we are. You put us in this situation, and I can't ignore it. So that's different than trying to discipline with religion. Oh, you're in trouble, so you're going to sit in timeout and watch this Christian movie or Christian film, or read the Christian book. It's like, no, that we need those spiritual disciplines to be in our children's lives, but that doesn't need to be a part of our parental punitive discipline. So don't mix those two things. That creates a big mess that's hard to clean up, and that really won't come out until the kid's an adult. So don't discipline with religion. So we've had a lot of conversation around discipline. Again, the biggest idea is make sure you discipline your kids, because that responsibility falls with you, but someone or something else will do it if you don't. Not good. So let's be intentional. The intentional father. Let's be the intentional father with our kids. Have a plan when it comes to our discipline, and then carry it out. Let's help our children win in life. Blessings to you and your fatherhood journey. Catch you on the next episode.